The Christmas shopping season is off to a strong start with record Cyber Monday spending and online Black Friday purchases. Will it be enough to jumpstart the economy going into 2024? Well, joining us is Dr. Alexander Salter, Associate Professor of Economics at the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. And his latest book is Money and the Rule of Law. Dr. Salter, it's good to talk with you again. So many of the Black Friday and Cyber Monday purchases were made with buy now, pay later, that option. That was up 47% over last year. So how will that affect the economy both in the short and long term?
Consumers seem happy with high levels of holiday spending, at least so far. Total Black Friday sales were about $9.8 billion. That's a record, up 7.5% since last year. Now, I think that this is primarily a barometer of economic health. I don't really think that we should look at consumer spending, especially during a cyclical portion of the year like the holidays, as causing economic health. Instead, I think that it necessarily reflects consumers who think that they're in a good enough position to continue spending down their balances that they've accumulated over the past several years. There is a limit to that, so it can't go on forever, but at least for now, it seems that some analysts' worries about a dearth of spending going into the holiday season has not materialized.
Yeah, well, of course, a lot of people went with that buy now, pay later. Also, credit card purchases for Christmas shopping because their pocketbooks are a bit stretched now because of inflation. And I saw a statistic that said the average American is now paying more than $119 for every $100 in purchases made 3 years ago. So what do you see happening with inflation?
You're right that consumers are getting pinched by inflation, especially if you look at the categories of goods that are most purchased during the holiday season. Those goods have been rising in terms of prices at a rate of about 4.5% per year for the last 3 years. Now, that's against the general backdrop of overall inflation. Everything's getting more expensive. So it's understandable that consumers are turning increasingly to credit instruments to finance their purchases, although it's interesting that they're not using specific department store and or brand credit cards. They're going to more general purchasing methods. Again, I largely see this as consumers responding to the fact that their cash balances are perhaps not where they want them, so they're turning to credit instruments. That's not necessarily worrying, but again, you want to keep your eye on household balance sheets. You want to keep an eye on personal savings rates. Because at the end of the day, a spending splurge is only temporary. If you want long-run economic health generated by consumer confidence, you need consumer spending to be complemented with strong saving and investment behavior. And I'm not sure whether we're there yet. As long as we're wishing for Christmas gifts, I want a pony.
Dr. Salter, what about the Fed? Will it keep raising interest rates or will they keep them where they are? Any chance of them lowering them?
Most analysts expect one more rate hike coming up. 5.5% to 7.5% is the expected federal funds rate range for the end of the year. I'm not as confident. I think that the Federal Reserve is going to look at the economy right now and see easing pricing pressures and say that interest rates and monetary policy are about where we want them. And it's actually unprecedented for the money supply to actually be falling. Normally what you get is it grows more slowly during disinflationary periods, but doesn't actually fall. Well, right now it is falling. And so I think when you add up all of these facts, you get a picture of monetary policy already being appropriately tight, if not a little bit too tight. I don't think that they're going to hike rates, but at the same time, I wouldn't expect a rate cut either. My guess is that Fed decision makers are going to look for inflation to dip below 3% before they consider any monetary loosening.
Well, the index of leading economic indicators has declined for the past 19 months. So does that suggest a recession is coming? And how can that trend continue without the nation falling into a recession?
Well, you know what they say about economists and forecasting. We've successfully predicted 9 out of the last 2 recessions. Everybody's been thinking about a recession coming around the corner, and for a time I was worried about one as well, and yet it never quite seems to materialize. The economy is teetering on the edge. It's not super strong, but neither is it deathly sick. At the same time, I wouldn't say that we're out of the woods just yet. I don't think we're going to fall into recession. I think that we're going to continue to get slowly increasing output growth. Unemployment is going to stay about where it is. And as long as the Federal Reserve continues pursuing a disinflationary monetary policy that can help markets work as well as they possibly can, I think we're going to be okay. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think we're going to be okay.
Okay, how do you think that's going to affect the election then, if we have much of the same?
That's a very good question. You got to assume that monetary policymakers are sensitive to the effects of their policies on the election. It's pretty straightforward about their options. They can loosen monetary policy before the election, in which case that benefits the incumbent. They can tighten even more than they are going to, in which case it'll harm the incumbent, or they can continue steady on, in which case it'll probably be a wash. I would be very surprised if monetary policymakers made an obvious move to influence the economy for electoral purposes. That would be a breach of central bank independence going the other way. We are normally concerned about keeping central bankers independent from politicians and other policymakers. This would be central bankers injecting themselves into the political process, which is a huge no-no. You would have to seriously question whether this Federal Reserve could continue to exist as constituted if they did something so short-sighted and anti-democratic as that.
Okay, we'll see what happens here. We always appreciate you, Dr. Alexander Salter, Associate Professor of Economics at Texas Tech. Thank you so much, and hope you get that pony for Christmas.
Me too. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
God bless.